CWL Miami starts today, so let's get things set up with which matches we're going to see on the day of Friday, including some betting lines and predictions for you guys, and how the format of the weekend will be breaking out beyond that in this episode. Hello, Diddy fans. Welcome back. Good to see you. IHOLDSHIFT here. We have got, again, CWL Miami kicking off today with a lot of things coming forward to you. Specifically, on the day of Friday, we'll be dealing with the entire play-in bracket will be done. And on top of that, the first round of the play-off bracket will be coming forward. Now, why I emphasize play-in versus play-off, they're two different things, but one leads into the other. If you don't know exactly what I mean, I did a more in-depth video on this a couple days ago. You can find it on my channel under the CWL Miami setup and format video that I did. But before we get started, let's take a look at where our top 8 teams, again, top 4 from each division, where they found themselves in the playoff bracket. Again, the only match we'll actually see on Friday is the one between Heretics and a play-in team and Reciprocity and a play-in team. Optic, 100 Thieves, and FaZe Clan have already made their way into what is essentially the second round, a very tough half of the bracket. The top half, nutty. Optic, 100 Thieves, and FaZe Clan, and one side of the bracket, rough. United will be awaiting the winner of Reciprocity and the play-in squad, and then Gen G will be going up against Splice. Now, the play-in bracket, as we take a look at that, will be consisting of the bottom 8 teams, the bottom 4 from each division. They will play in a single elimination bracket, and the top 2 at the very end will work their way into the double elimination playoffs. So essentially treat this as a last chance qualifier to get into the playoffs. That's going to be happening on Saturday and Sunday. Let's go ahead and dig into these games. Again, as you see them, top half of the bracket, Team Envy and UYU, Evil Geniuses and Enigma 6, Midnight and Elevate, and then Units will be going up against Luminosity. And actually, I believe the bottom half of the bracket will be scheduled first. I'm not 100% sure, but let's go ahead and take a look at our head-to-heads, as we'll be dealing with Midnight and Elevate first. And this is going to be an interesting matchup. 5-1 is Midnight since they formed this new roster in the hardpoint. Insanely good average of 235 for them and 173 average against them. Also 2-2 in both the Search and Destroy and the Control. Remember, they were able to beat Elevate 3-1 the last time before. You would think that would likely probably happen again. They also found wins versus the Heretics and Team Envy. They lost 0-3 to E United in, I won't say convincing fashion, because the hardpoint was one-sided, but the Search and the Control both went to a round 11 and a round 5 versus E United. So this Midnight team looking very, very scary. For the Elevate side, they had some decent looks in their respawn, but they didn't really come out with a very valuable win-loss nor averages. 2-6 in the hardpoint, 1-3 in the respawn with this new roster, and it's a minus about 45 average in the differential in their hardpoint scores, and about a 1.5 round differential between them and their controls. The one side that this squad has looked relatively decent in is actually in their Search and Destroy. Yes, they went 2-3, but 2 of those losses went to round 11. That was versus Midnight and versus Optic. Remember, they almost beat Optic. In fact, they probably should. Now, again, the conversation there is that set really representative of this Elevate team because Optic was trying some different things, maybe not trying their hardest. Who knows what exactly it was, but you would figure that Optic, after the boot camp, would not have a problem with a team like Elevate. And in this one, I don't see Elevate really doing much work against Midnight either. Their control has been a little bit all over the place, and when they do lose in the hard point specifically, they typically get beat up pretty heavily. Jumping to our second match, though, we'll be dealing with Units going up against Luminosity. We'll start with the LG conversation first because they are definitely one of the favorites going through this play-in bracket, if not making a run in the playoffs as a whole. This new squad went 3-1 in total in their set scores. When they did their roster mania change in the cross divisional, they were 5-1 in the hardpoint, 3-2 in the Search and Destroy, and 3-1 in the Control. Out of all the teams that made changes, this is the best map mode combination win-loss ratio out of everybody who made changes. 238.5 average for them in the hardpoint, a 180 against them, but also a 5-round differential for them against the 4.2 against them, and they still hold a very heavy positive in the Control with a 2.75 for them and a 1.2 held 2-5 against them. Their losses were relatively close, a 181 to 250 loss on the hard point to 100 Thieves. That was on frequency. I mapped that 100 Thieves played a lot that week. And then their search and destroy losses happened at round 9 or round 10, a 3-6 loss and a 4-6 loss. Also, their only control loss was a 2-3 loss. This Luminosity team is very, very scary. For units, though, the good news for units is that your respawn is actually pretty decent since the changes. This previous Team War squad kind of getting picked up with the combination of Joe and Rated has looked relatively good. A 5-2 hardpoint, a 2-2 control, but here's the bad news for units in this set. They are 1-5 in search and destroy. And none of those losses were all that close. The closest they got in their losses was a 4-6 loss, and that was to UYU. So a lot of things have to be worked on for units. They didn't look all that convincing comparatively to LG in the control. So again, you would think the favor would lean towards that of Luminosity, and I think most people are probably picking it the same way. Again, we'll be doing full-on match predictions and lines as we get into our Bookie's Worst Nightmare here in just a minute. But going into the back half, what I believe of the day, schedule-wise, will be Evil Geniuses going up against Enigma 6. This is going to be an interesting one because I think this is probably the closest matchup that we have in the first round of the play-in bracket. We'll start with E6 first. Why not? I was going to say Evil Geniuses, but let's start with E6. This squad has been under fire because they made changes after they finished top 6, and they did that at the first time around as well when they did it after Fort Worth and was going into London. This team was 3-4 in the hardpoint, 3-2 in the search and destroy, and 1-3 in the control. However, don't let just those win-loss ratios dissuade you. Look at the averages. They play very close maps almost every single time. A -1 point differential in their hardpoint. Not even. It's actually a 0.3 point differential. So that just goes to show that their hardpoints are very, very close. Also, about a 5-point average for them and a 5-point average against them in the search and destroy. Very close sets. They find themselves a little bit more hurt in the control differential, but still, this is a squad that still was able to go 2-2 in a pretty difficult group staging. They were able to find a 3-1 win versus UYU, but more importantly, they were able to take Game 5 away from Evil Geniuses, so a bit of a rematch coming forward. Their losses were versus Luminosity and FaZe Clan. And again, that best of 5 set going the distance versus Evil Geniuses, just for some perspective, a 250 to 103 win on Arsenal in the hardpoint for one of those stages. They also had their worst hardpoint loss though in quite some time with a 66 to 250 loss on frequency. However, both search and destroys went in their favor, a 6-5 and a 6-3, and their control was unfortunately a loss for them at a 1-3 score total. So this team definitely looks a little bit more prospectively worse in the control than Evil Geniuses do. As you take a look at their stat lines, they've been doing pretty well since their changes. 17-18 in the hardpoint, 15-12 in the search, which is really good considering where they were before, and 8-11, which is incredibly better than what this team was in their first roster, where they were like 2-13. It was really, really bad. Now they have, I put their total to 10-24 as a collective whole. So for this Evil Geniuses squad, you have to be feeling a little bit better about what they might be able to do in the control, but you worry about their hardpoint, which has been lackluster lately, and will they be able to clean things up and get the job done in the search and destroy? I could see this one going all the way to Game 5, so definitely hunker down for that one if you tune in for this one specifically. To finish things off, Envy versus UYU, on Crowder hours, you heard Methods. He was talking about how this UYU team is nasty right now. They've gotten so good. I don't believe it. I just don't. There were so many things that were going wrong with this team. It's hard to believe that just in a couple of weeks they'll be able to compete with a high-octane team like Team Envy. Yes, Envy had problems, but they're also so much more talented. UYU 0-6 in their hard point with this roster at nearly a negative 100 point differential between what they usually score and what they give up and score. A 153 is what they average. It's awful. 2-2 in the search and destroy, not bad. Control, just as bad as the hard point, 0-4. This team is awful at respawn. Simply put, you can find some hero plays from a couple of players in Search and Destroy, which is typically what happened. They won their Search and Destroys versus Units and Enigma 6, but they got absolutely smacked by Splice and 100 Thieves. And beyond that, the set versus Enigma 6, they got manhandled in both the respawns, which is a team that I would relate very closely to a team like Envy is. Even against Units, they weren't able to take a respawn versus anybody. So there's that for you. For Envy, yes, they looked pretty atrocious, but they were able to find that 3-0 versus Optic. Again, a lot of you Greenwall fans are going to say, but Optic wasn't trying. Doesn't make a difference. They smacked them on the Seaside hardpoint. It doesn't matter if you could have literally done whatever. You could have pulled out GKSs and Cordites, and that should still not happen. in the team of Optic going up against Team Envy. That was a smacking on Seaside. It did go round 11 for a win on the Search and Destroy, but the 3-1 win on Frequency Control was also convincing. They would come back to play Midnight and look pretty atrocious on it, with the exception of the Search and Destroy. The Search and Destroy is the only real spot that this Envy team has looked relatively decent, which is something that I never thought I'd hear myself say after the 0-17 streak that they were on in Search and Destroy. But they had a round 11 loss versus Reciprocity, a round 11 win versus Optic, and a 6-4 win versus Midnight. The good news, if you're an Envy fan here, is the fact that you're going up against an atrocious Respawn team, and you'll have some freedoms there because your Respawn has also been not looking super, super great. They were 2-4 in their hardpoint and 2-2 in their control. So not awful, not great. Let's dig into our bookie's worst nightmare, though, and take a look as far as what we should be expecting as far as my predictions go. Again, you can find betting all across the world. It just depends on what region you're at. A simple Google search will probably tell you more about your betting availability than I could, to be completely candid. So let's dig on in. We're not going to do any kind of scorecarding for this because I can't, again, I don't get lines until they instantly pop for games throughout the entirety of the day, so I'll just give you the initial ones that I like to start off the days. Starting with Midnight and Elevate. Again, like I mentioned, this Midnight team just looks so much better in the Respawn specifically. They are the favorites at a -250, which is a pretty heavy favorite line if you look at it in perspective of the bookies that are out there making these lines come true. A -110 on the spread, which is a little tempting. For Elevate, they are +175 on the underdog, a -125 if you try to take them at a 2-map win or a 3-map win. Personally, not much to bet on this one. If you want to bet the spread, I think it's risky, but it could potentially pay for you. I've personally got this one going 3-1, and I'm notching this as a parlay bet option because I feel pretty confident that Midnight should be able to take a team like Elevate without much problem. Again, the one concern you have to have when you bet these games is the fact that we have not seen these squads play in about 2 weeks, maybe 3, but beyond that, they know who they're playing up against, and this is the only match that they're worried about. So a team like Elevate, can they prepare for a team like Midnight and vice versa? Who comes better prepared? Who comes up on fire? Again, single elim. So there's no second life in this play-in bracket. Personally, though, I still have Midnight going 3-1. In the bottom half of the first part of the day, Units will be going up against Luminosity. And like I mentioned, this Units team does look pretty decent in the Respawn, especially their hardpoint. But Luminosity looked better across every mode. They were, again, the only team that made changes that had a positive win-loss ratio across every mode combination in the CWL variant. So I've got this one, naturally speaking, as the bookies have it laid out, a -700 heavy favorite to LG. Even if you want to bet the spread, you're not going to get much return there. -225 on the spread for them to find a 3-1 or a 3-0 for Units. Heavy underdogs +400. Don't even bother with it. That's going to be at least a 3-1, if not a 3-0 coming out for LG. I just don't think this Units team has it in them to take a squad like LG the distance. This is looking like a major competitor, not only for the play-ins, but also potentially for the playoffs if they get there. The back half of the day, this is the big one. Evil Geniuses and Enigma 6. Very excited to see what this one has to provide. The favorites are listed as Enigma 6 in this one at -188, which is a pretty heavy favorite coming through, and I don't know if I like that. +137 for the underdogs and Evil Geniuses. The spread bets, not super favorable. You're going to want to stay away from those, I think, because personally, it's going to be down to the wire. I can see this one going 5 again. Yes, EG have been looking decent in the Search and Destroys lately, but they did not look particularly fantastic against a team like Enigma 6 that likes to get aggressive on you. And if Enigma 6 comes out and sets the pace early, I think I can see Enigma 6 potentially finding a 3-1, but I have them here as a 3-2 winner against Evil Geniuses, going probably to 5. And honestly, it could go either way. This is the best matchup that we're going to be given in the play-in bracket in round number 1 for sure. To finish off the day, as far as the play-in bracket round 1 goes, it's going to be Envy and UIU. Like I mentioned, the UIU is just not a good team. Their respawn is all over the place. I don't see them cleaning up enough to be able to take down a team like Envy. Maybe if they were playing Elevate or Units, they would have a chance, but a team like Envy that have Gunless and Decimate, I just don't see it going their way. The heavy favorite, again, like I mentioned, is Envy at -350, +250 for UIU, which essentially builds a picture that this game might be closer than I'm letting on. But I don't think it will be. I've got this one going at worst a 3-1 for Envy. Again, add that to the parlay that I'm going to be putting together with not only Envy, but Luminosity and Midnight. So a 3-way match winner bet to give you some kind of a return. Again, you're not going to find a lot of favor because Luminosity and Envy are pretty heavily favored, but you never know. And if you want to get risky and put in your pick between Evil Geniuses and Enigma 6 into your parlay as well, feel free to. I personally wouldn't because that one's going to be a little bit of a toss-up, I believe. Before we do our sign off, I want to give predictions as well for the rest of the play-in bracket based on my predictions. Currently, there's not going to be ability to give you guys some betting lines, so I'm just going to go through the bracket very, very quickly. So from Team Envy, UYU, I had Team Envy winning. From Evil Geniuses, Enigma 6, I had Enigma 6 winning. In that head-to-head, I think it's going to be a little bit easier for Enigma 6 to find the victory, and I've got Enigma 6 qualifying from the top half. The biggest thing when it comes down to that matchup is the sheer fact that Enigma 6 has looked very solid across every single mode, especially in their respawn, and Envy have not really had that really at all yet. Maybe with the exception of a couple isolated maps here or there across the different modes, but we have not seen a full picture of this team yet. My confidence still lies with E6 to get out of the top half. In the bottom half, Midnight would technically be going up against Luminosity based on my predictions. And this one would be a very, very good one, I think, simply because I think there's a lot of power here in this Midnight roster, and if they come in fully clicking off of their win versus Elevate, which I anticipate happening, I think they can get LG a run for their money. But again, I still think LG is the more complete team across every single mode based on what we saw. So you figure if both teams improve at the same levels, again, based on the rosters, you think LG probably improves a touch better than Midnight does. You give the edge to LG. So coming out of the play-in bracket, I've got LG and Enigma 6 to be able to go there. And then beyond that, I believe it would be LG going up into the top half to play up against Heretics, and then Enigma 6 would go to the bottom and play up against Reciprocity. I've got LG, if that is the case, I got LG beating Heretics, and I've got Enigma 6 beating Reciprocity. So it's going to be a good day. I don't want to go too far in depth with that simply because I don't know what exactly is going to happen. So that's going to do it. That's our setup and predictions coming out for you guys. Again, we'll be doing a recap tonight going in, and we'll have it published by Saturday morning for all the games that happened today on Friday. We'll be doing that again for Saturday as well on Sunday. We also have a couple of new analysis pieces that have been put up. So if you're looking to get an inside look at either Optic or United before they start this tournament, I did a breakdown of their hardpoint on Arsenal and their control on Arsenal. You can find those links as well on the YouTube channel. Until next time, though, friends, we'll catch you guys for the recaps tomorrow and the day after. I've been IHOLDSHIFT. Until next time, hope you keep holding it down. Later. Bye-bye.